Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're in YouTube, you may see a little link down there. You can use that to jump into the actual Zoom conversation and be part of the chat and so on and so forth. If you're here in Zoom and you're an attendee and this is the first time you've come, welcome. We're glad to have you. You're probably seeing that there's some people that are panelists and there's some people that are attendees. And you're probably, how do I become a panelist? Well, you just got to show up early. You're going to see things here. You're going to watch this conversation, and you're going to say, these guys, they don't know what they're talking about. If you think that, and you think that you know more, then we want you here. We want you up here in the panel to argue with us. So this is the pit. So join us and definitely become part of that conversation. We want to hear your voice. We open the doors at 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. and I can't promise anything for the first half hour. We're just talking wherever it goes. Sometimes it's technical, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's always fun. So anyway, but between 6:30 and 6:40, we'll hand out the Discord link. Discord link is where over 600 of us keep on talking about this between all these shows because 3 hours isn't enough. And then between 6:40 and 6:45, we then switch over to mic checks. Once you see us do the mic check, it's too late. You can't be on the panel. So you need to get here before 6:40 to ensure your place in the panel. If you want to do that, just get here at 6:40, raise your digital hand, and we'll bring you in and do a mic check with you. If you get here between 6:40 and 6:55 or 7 o'clock, you'll see us doing the mic checks. That's what we're kind of working through there. At 7 o'clock, from 7 to 8 o'clock, you can ask questions about media production, and that's actually your job. So if you're an attendee, we don't really harbor freeloaders here. So what you need to do is you need to actually be asking questions, voting on questions. That's your job as an attendee, is to be part of that conversation. If you've got questions about media production, ask them. If you like some of the questions that are up there, vote on them. There's 198 people. There's not 198 questions or 198 votes. You got to pick up the pace. That's all I'm saying as an attendee. So our job as panelists, we can't ask the questions right now. So our job as panelists is to discuss the questions. We're just discussing what you set out for us in the process. So that's there's a whole hour of that every day from 7 to 8. You can be guaranteed it's a ADD wonderland. We switch subjects every 2 minutes, and then at the second hour, we have something that we talk about specifically. So on Mondays is kind of a free-for-all. I think next week we're talking about Keynote. The week after that, we're talking about AWS. Tuesdays are all audio. Wednesdays, cameras. Thursdays are usually a special guest. Fridays and Saturdays, 8 to 9, is now education. The Friday session with education, which is today, got so hectic over the last couple of weeks that we just said, maybe we should just do this the whole time. So we'll be doing Fridays and Saturdays at 8 to 9. So we'll have these are questions about generating media, online education, that type of thing. If you're looking for answers, hopefully we can provide some of those for you. Saturday's the long day from 9 to 10. Today, we're going to switch things around a little bit this Saturday. 9 to 10 is Leland Best. He's going to be talking about vMix. 10 o'clock, Steve Bays is going to be talking about Final Cut. And at 11 o'clock, Nick Justin will be talking about Unreal. So that's the long day. Sunday is just 2 hours of us just doing Q&A. So it's usually a more philosophical day. Anyway, if you want to if you want to invite anybody, if there's teachers, if there's audio engineers, if there's video folks, whatever that is in the media area, you can put that link anywhere that's in the chat right now. So that's you can tweet it out and put it on LinkedIn or whatever you want to do. So the larger this audience grows, the more people we can attract to come talk to us, and we can learn faster. So that's the whole goal here as far as that growth goes. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Chris, what do we got?
Good morning, Alex. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Great. I see 7 questions. What do you have?
I see 7 questions. Perfect. I think we're good to go.
Jeffrey Reyes says, Alex, I think this may have been discussed pre-show, but can you explain the reason for getting rid of your green screen and putting a solid gray backdrop to your Zoom setup?
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons. One is that I do like the green screen, and I wanted to perfect it, so for this, and so I have it there. I had to break my whole system down because of a larger production, and we have so many productions coming through our system right now. I can't get my stuff back yet until all the back-ordered equipment from Blackmagic shows up. So anyway, so I had to simplify my setup, and I really started experimenting with this because I wanted to have something that I can go anywhere. I can travel with it. I could theoretically put it in a suitcase. I could, and still look pretty much the same. And so I decided to kind of go down that path. The other reason is that we also know that as we have solid backgrounds, our compression will be better. So the way when you think about any of these live compression, you have a certain amount of bandwidth to use. You have a budget. So right now, our budget in Zoom is about 3.3, 3.4 megabits a second. If I don't make Zoom worry about the background, if I say, hey, don't worry about this data back here, it'll put more data here. And so my face will be sharper than it would otherwise be. So the more complicated the background, the softer the foreground is going to look, oftentimes, especially with real time. So we're experimenting with simplifying our background. Short depth of field helps that as well. But I'm experimenting with this idea of kind of within our company, now that we've done this, I've done it and experimented with it and decided it's useful. We're actually standardizing on it. So if you get a meeting with us, you'll see just gray, going across, because we want to kind of simplify that background and have a certain look. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So is what you're talking about in terms of like having a solid background, you're talking about not temporal, but spatial compression, right? Does it matter that
it's actually spatial and temporal? So I
didn't think temporal compression was even possible live. Am I wrong?
You're wrong. Yeah, temporal compression is definitely happening. Yeah, and so there's definitely temporal compression. Yeah, there's definitely in these live compression. In fact, the temporal compression is trying to do as much as it can, in temporal, which means that it's basically saying, if this doesn't change at all, like one thing that really annihilates a live connection is blowing wind in the trees behind you. You'll just watch the whole thing just go, because it just runs out of things. So when the temporal compression fails is when it just destroys the spatial compression. And so that's why little camera shakes are really bad for compression. So when we're in conferences and the director says, well, I don't think it's that bad that it's going like this all the time, as the person streaming, I'm like, yeah, that's real bad. That's super bad. Like as bad as you can get is to have detail behind the speaker and have it go like this. You're just destroying your show. So we that is a constant kind of challenge for us, is to reduce that. But that little camera shake that people see on a 90x lens, off in the distance. That's why for the shows that we get to decide what that looks like, we actually build a platform for the camera that's separate from the operator. That platform is then filled with sand, the whole platform. Sometimes we roll concrete in and set it inside of the sand, and then you encase it, and you basically you end up floating the camera on top of concrete inside of sand for really high profile events. And it's super stable.
You can
put it on top of a. Go ahead.
Do you have to engage like a masonry union to take care of that?
We haven't had to, but we've had a lot of confused Teamsters look at what we're doing and going, what are they doing with that camera? People don't see it very often, but it's a concrete block inside of sand, floated inside of sand, is super stable to put a big camera on to throw a long lens in for an event. But most people are like, that's crazy, I'll never do it. But once you see it, you're like, oh yeah, that's pretty nifty. Jeffrey?
And I've mentioned this before. The one thing that Zoom and Skype and all these other companies are starting to really work on is their AI ability. Zoom has an AI background, which is why we have these virtual backgrounds to them.
Which are horrible ideas, by the way. Virtual backgrounds are a horrible idea.
Yeah, So it's constantly looking for things. So like if somebody crossed by me behind them, they notice that face, they'd recognize that face. So it's a lot of extra data that's coming through. So by making the background nice and clean, you don't have those problems. And once again, the focus, as Alex was saying.
Yeah, and so the simpler your background, the more it'll be focused on you. And then I like the background to be slightly darker so that the head pops out a little bit when we kind of design it. Go ahead, Jason, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, well, in production, I mean, I love the idea of putting sand on a solid camera, because that's always what's done on like a rail system. That's how you stabilize rails. In every single production I've ever seen, you put sand down. So that's awesome.
I don't know where I didn't come up with the idea. I was working on an event, on a big political event years ago, and just saw them do it and thought, I'm going to do that. And what's funny was that they gave the rest of the press you learn a lot of things when we're getting to the political season, and I worked on political streams and events for 30 years and of every kind all over the world, and all different, back parties and backgrounds and everything else. And you learn a lot of things about how to manage it. So one of the things that you learn, and this is a little side topic, is how to manage the press, is that you have your cameras be really high quality. Like the mistake campaigns make all the time is they have their, like, oh, the press is coming, I'm just going to put up a little camera. No. You make yours the best camera that you can get, and you stabilize it, and you separate your operator from everybody else. You give them the perfect shot, and then you put everybody else on shared risers. But then you make your feed available to the press. No, I'll take your feed. Because especially if you really want them to take your feed, you have to. There's always this weight of, do you bother? If you really want them to take your feed, you let the press share. You let the video press share the riser with the photographers. Photographers are crazy, and they just run all over the place because they don't care about, all they care about is their shot, and they don't care about any of the shake or anything else. And so it means that the entire press is going like this, and you have this nice solid shot. And the producer will typically scream at somebody, as why does CBS have this nice shot and we don't have that shot? And they're like, well, that's the press pool. And they're like, just take the press pool. And then you've gotten rid of that camera. So anyway, there's a lot of ways that you can, when we talk about, how you see what you see, there's a lot of little things that you make easier or harder. And we've done a lot of things where we'll deliver to the press that press pool as a SD card right after the event. And this is for both political technology conferences, everything else, in multiple languages. So you have like 3 or 4 different recording systems going on, and you're pulling them all out and handing them all to everybody. And the more you do as a service, if you're the person doing it, the more the story comes out the way that you designed it. Stuart.
I deal with the noise from drag cars, and my screen's gone green again, so I'll fix that in a second. With that floating concrete on sand, how well does that deal with loud noises like a drag car or a rocket launch would make?
I don't know if it would. I don't know if it'd be good for a rocket launch, but usually on a rocket launch, you're so far away that you won't feel very much of it anyway. We had a talk about that earlier. You're really psychedelic there.
That looks like artificial color to me.
So anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, really low frequencies. It just depends on how much. This is the same with audio, with video. I mean, with audio in general. The vibration that's created by that it has to do with how large your stop is. So sand is one thing. When you're floating a room, for instance, we're getting ready to float a room. What you're able to protect from is really a function of how much air has been, or vacuum has been created between the inner wall and the outer wall. And so yeah, definitely low frequencies and high frequencies are much different. It's really easy to get rid of high frequencies, a couple inches. Low frequencies, you need a lot more space. Next question. Chris, are you there? Next question. Did we lose Chris?
I think Chris has left us.
Chris has left the building. All right.
Can you recommend external microphones?
Let's see here. Can you recommend, Tim McKean said, can you recommend external microphones in $50 to $150 range for recording video to a smartphone? Yeah, go ahead, Victor.
Yes, right at your $150, the Shure MV88 is a really nice microphone for just that purpose and more. Also, the built-in application is pretty amazing. So I'll put a link.
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
So another piece of the puzzle is what's the interface into the phone. The original iPhones had a little 3.5 millimeter jack, then they moved to Lightning, and now they moved to USB-C. So if you don't pay attention to what the I/O into your phone is, it's pretty hard to get an external microphone into it.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I got a couple right here from IK Multimedia. This is the iRig HD. This would be a handheld option. And then, of course, they have this nice camera option. You put it on the phone. You can set it to go either one way or both ways if you're doing any type of interview.
And I've also used the Rode. I think it's the this one goes in. They make a couple different ones, but I've used the Rode that is I think it's the Video Mic Me that will go into the TRRS.
That's a
but the
great
Rode-
mic.
Yeah, that mic I think sounds pretty darn good. I've done some voiceover stuff with it in a pinch. I carry one around in my bag as like I need to have something better than the phone, and I've been pretty successful with it. But that one does have a TRRS, but I think they make a version of it that's also Lightning. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, correct. They make both. For me, that's the go-to.
Yep, it's great. Go ahead, Michael Ball, and then we'll move on.
The same Rode. Oh, I use the same Rode, and then I use the included Apple Lightning to 3.5mm adapter. Well, formerly included. I don't know if it's still there, but these work pretty well, and they're like $9. And there is a Rode now that I think has a Lightning adapter in the kit, depending on which one you want. But the one in the box works.
Awesome. Next question.
The next question, Matthew says, I'm only seeing 25 panelists in YouTube and all 32 panelists in Zoom. Any idea why?
It's just the way Zoom streams. So Zoom streams out the first 25. It's what you would normally have in the first page, so to speak. If you were on a 25, I think that Mickey and I both are set to up to 49. So you're seeing what Mickey's seeing, who's doing the edit. Did I make you host, Mickey, or are you doing? Did I do that correctly? Yeah, I did. Okay.
No, I'm just co-host now.
Well, what am I? Oh, sorry. So everyone's been watching the grid. Sorry about that.
And
there you go, Mickey. Your host. Too. Sorry about that. Panelists can set theirs to 25 or 49. To go from there. So, Mickey, you have the host now. Sorry about that.
Yes, sir.
Always feel free to interrupt me on that one. Next question.
Leland might want to get involved in this. Matthew says, I'm having clicking and popping issues from vMix into Zoom on the same PC using NDI virtual input. I suspect a bit of rate mismatch, but I can't find where that might be. Any ideas? Leland?
I've always got ideas as to whether or not they're going to work or not is questionable. But let me give you a little overview just in my window where I can screen share this. This is Voicemeeter's settings panel off to the right of my screen. So if you want to pin this, you may be able to see it. You may not be able to see it that well. You do want to make sure your bitrate settings for all devices in Voicemeeter are paired up at 48 hertz, 48,000 hertz. If you don't, you're going to have mismatched bit rates of 44.1, 48, 32, depends on your equipment. So you have to actually go into the Windows sound settings in this case. I'll pull it up for you real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. And in order to do that, you would normally right-click down on your microphone on your taskbar and get to the sound control panel by taking your sound settings choice. And when this opens, which takes a second, this is just one of Windows slow menus, you'll see on the recording aspect all of the devices in your system if it's Windows. Now, obviously, if you're running vMix, you're running Windows. What you basically have to do is go to the properties of each of these devices to the advanced tab. And this is where you're going to change the bitrate settings and sampling rate settings for your device. Every device is different. It could be a 1-channel, 2-channel, 16-bit, 24-bit, 8-bit, depends on the device and how old it is. You're going to be looking mostly at 16-bit at 48,000 hertz, a DVD quality setting. That's typical on all of these web conferencing systems for the most part. It's supposed to be what NDI is established at, which is 48. What the issue we're running into on Zoom with popping and cracking is a little bit different. And if you look into, I have to kind of do a screen share to do this. So I'm going to close this for a second. If someone can give me the screen share, I don't think I can get to it just yet, because it's important to see that inside Zoom, they actually have a little different way of handling. So Chris is going to show up on the screen when I do this. Well, maybe not. You're going to see my main screen. But in the case of Zoom, can I do settings on here when I'm in? Maybe I can't
do a screen share.
No, you can't do that.
Zoom
All right,
controls.
I got it. I'm going to do it here. Hold on one second, folks, and I'll let you see what I'm talking about. So I'm back to Chris. Basically, on the audio settings, what you'll see on Zoom under the statistics is that for audio, Zoom is receiving a a 24 kilohertz signal, which is at least half of the 48 kilohertz frequency that we would expect to see. But we've been finding in the recordings, when we actually record from Zoom, we're getting 32 kilohertz, which is blowing my mind because the bit rates on the videos are even way off. It's a 25 frame per second video, which I found astounding as well. So there's obviously some translation problems that Zoom is having when it's translating the video over. I suspect we need to contact Zoom, find out if we can get the bit rates changed on the audio distributed through Zoom, for one, to get rid of that popping. And the other is to contact NDI and find out where we can change bit rates in their software to make it a little more easy to accommodate changes to 44.1 or 48. So we're working.
All right. Great. Thanks, Leland. And you'll see more of that tomorrow. If you have more vMix questions, those are exactly the kind of questions that you want to have with vMix. Leland's going to be here at 9 o'clock from 9 to 10, just answering questions and showing you cool stuff on vMix. All right, next question.
This is a good question, Attila. Mic check showed how even the simplest setup can sound great. Why add a ton more stuff to your chain if an H4n does the job well and can be used out in the field to record bird sounds?
Jeff, and then Yashai, and then Greg.
One of the reasons is this is a lab to test new equipment and try it out and get feedback from people. So that's a reason to try out new things and complicate the chain, because we could make it break here and fail forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Yashai?
I agree with Jeff on that. However, I'm 100% also believe that Zoom just doesn't handle all the quality of audio we send to it. So yes, you can get away with the simplest setup, because really Zoom just giving us between, I don't know, 1,000 to 8,000 on the frequency range, all the audible stuff for voice.
Greg, and then Jason, and then Bill.
Well, it's no secret that I'm old school, and I think the simplest chain is the best chain. But I understand the reasons for all the testing, because you use it in all a bunch of other applications as well. So I understand that. And as far as Zooms for sound effects, my go-to Zoom is the H1. It is fantastic.
Yep, absolutely.
That's what I record all my stuff with.
Jason?
Yeah, it's probably been said, but because most of us have studios that are used for more than just this office hours thing, that's why.
And then Bill?
Yeah, I'm going to amplify what Jason just said. You know, if you're doing sound for a Zoom meeting, it's one thing. If you're doing sound to put into a theater with Dolby THX, it's an entirely different thing. And if you have any bad hash or background noise or something in that kind of setting, it's just going to be blown out of proportion. So different.
And one of the things that I try to do as much as I can. Right now, I'm a little hobbled by giving away a lot of my equipment, but having all that gear also lets me constantly ring it out. So I'm using it every morning. I'm using it every day. I'm going, oh, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. The biggest problem you get into with events is you go in and you built it up and it's the first time you used it, or you've tested it a couple days before. But when you're using it every day, you tend to ring out all the little idiosyncrasies that occur. And this is a great opportunity for us to do that. Chris, and then Jeffrey, and then we'll move on. Summers and Jeff. Do you have something else, Chris?
Yeah, just if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. I keep it simple because I don't have a studio, which is what Jason was saying. And, in a professional level, we're constantly trying new stuff, as Jeff was saying as well.
And I think that we do. I think what's great about this, and the reason that we're talking about all these audio changes, so that the mic check is more than just us checking the mic. It's us learning from each other. So we're tuning our ear to what we like, what sounds good, what doesn't sound good. We're learning how different devices and different mics all interact with each other. So every day we get to do that. And again, and one of the reasons I wanted to focus on it is that I still believe that audio is the most important part of a live stream. You can you can watch a lot of bad video. You can't listen to a lot of bad audio. So it's super important that we get this right. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then we'll move on.
Last thing is, if a lot of us are using video switchers, and when you take audio from one source and video from another source, you start getting some latency issues. So we need some hardware to fix that, or bring it into the switchers, which means we need hardware and software to adjust from there.
And then Chris, we'll try to keep the education questions for the second hour. So
understood. Yep. So jumping down to Jeff Francis. This is great. Jeff's been in the activity monitor. What is VTDecoderXPC service, and why is it using 40% of my CPU? I'm on a Mac OS Mojave on a MacBook Pro i7. Seems to be worse when in Zoom for office hours and Safari is open. Just one of those little things that's running in the background.
Go ahead, Jeff.
TJ and I were chatting earlier, and it seems to be definitely a panelist Zoom function. He gets it when he's in panelist mode. When he's an attendee today, he doesn't see VT Decoder doing so much. So it's probably the video it's pushing out. But if anybody's got any other advice for me, let me know.
That makes
sense. It kicks up the fans.
Yeah, no, I mean, what we're doing is kind of magical. Like I think, like we're taking this raw video signal that's massive, and we're turning it into real-time video and encoding it, and you're and I are talking with less than a couple hundred milliseconds of delay. And I think that there is definitely compressing video and scaling video. Jeff, do you know, are you feeding Zoom a 720p signal or a 1080p signal?
A10 Mini Pro, so 1080.
So I can tell you that if you had a web presenter around, I would take the web presenter and plug it in and see if the same, I'll try to do this. We'll try to do this at some point. I have both of those in the office, but so scaling video is really computationally expensive. So that when you're talking about real-time scaling, so when you're talking about real-time scaling, that is a very expensive process. I know that when we're doing encoding, I can take a 720p signal and send it out to, like a little encoder, I can send it out to 20 outputs. It doesn't care. Like encoding is nothing. I give it a 1080p signal and I can do 4. And so, it's because it requires a lot more power to go. The encoding is not nearly as expensive as the scaling. So the fact is that you're sending, it has to scale down to 720 to go out. I think. And so that doing that in the process of uploading, I think is probably the most computationally expensive part of that process. It's not the encoding itself or even Zoom. It's the 1080p to 720p conversion is most likely what's causing that hit. Jeffrey and then Jason, and then we'll move on.
One thing that it's alluding to on the Apple website is that it's about a webcam thing. So if you're using a USB webcam source as opposed to a capture card, that might be the reason why what it's doing is they call it sandboxing into the bit. So I'm guessing it's a buffer of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, generally the capture card will be more computationally expensive because it's going to take an uncompressed signal and turn it into a compressed signal. But when you're passing it straight through, but it has to do with the transformations. Typically, is what really hammers both the GPU, especially on a laptop. It'll hammer the CPU because most of our laptops don't have great GPUs to take over the weight. Jason.
Yeah, I'm willing to try it both ways too. I have the web presenter as well as both ATEMs Mini. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alex. It's actually harder in real time to scale down well than it is to scale up well. Is that correct?
Oh, that's correct. Absolutely. But it's not. I mean, it's a little bit more, but not a lot. But it's definitely a big difference from getting the signal the way it's going to be sent out. Next question.
Chris Sanders says, what are the minimum technical requirements to ensure live streaming of a hybrid, remote and in-person secondary school lesson that could deliver good educational outcomes?
Let's bunt that one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just realized. Sorry, I got down to the word education. Brent, anyone streaming to Zoom using an ultrastudio mini recorder? If so, how are you bringing the feed into Zoom? Any direct way, or do you have to run it through OBS, vMix, Wirecast first, and send it as a virtual output?
So Zoom, I'm using a mini recorder right now because I had to put my web presenter into another chain because Skype is a dumpster fire. Anyway, so I have a mini recorder. What I will say is that after the May trouble, Zoom is the best, no close second to integrating with almost every interface we have. Whatever they fixed it well. Everybody else is like, I have to use Mimo Live to get into Blue Jeans and into Google Meet, Skype, anyway, and then WebEx and Skype, WebEx, GoToMeeting, and Chime are all just like, it has to be an absolute webcam. It can't do anything else. They're all just, I don't even know why those companies are in business. Rusko?
Yeah, I found a trick. I was trying to run a mini recorder into a i7 Mac Mini, and it wasn't working. And then I went online and found out that it was broken and that kind of stuff. I ran the ATEM installer for an ATEM Mini, and suddenly the ultrastudio kicked in and started working. So you can, I mean, that was magic. So there's something about updating the drivers and all that it does work, and it worked really well. Then you get, the only other question I have is which rate are you actually pulling in? Because that thing offers you everything from, 60 to 24 frames per second.
I'm just giving it 1080p 30. Like that's, and that's just because that's what I'm sending it. So I just figured I'll just pass it through. I haven't tried to transform it. Next question. Oh, Michael, go ahead. Michael, did you want to throw your 2 cents in there?
I was just going to say that on the OS thing, it also depends on the version, at least on Mac OS, that you're running with the drivers. Because when I upgraded to Catalina, I've seen a couple minor differences in what Zoom picks up, even with all the drivers installed. So there may be some local testing to do there.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Jamali says, I recently got a MacBook Pro 16-inch, cool, and it's great. I also have a 2016 27-inch iMac 5K. Is there a way of using my iMac as a screen for my MacBook Pro? There is. It's called
Chris.
Target Screen Mode. If you just Google it, it'll explain how to do it. It's kind of like the old Target Disk Mode. Oh, I guess not old. Target Disk Mode, but there is a way of sharing a screen.
What kind of latency is that?
I have no idea.
Okay, there you go.
Wait, doesn't Target Display Mode not work on the more recent, like on the 2016? Yep. I thought they
I'm looking at an older article. It may be that. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well.
It stopped with the 5K because they couldn't get the bandwidth into the machine.
That makes sense. There's a lot of pixels.
Was that what you were gonna say, Yishai? I caught you drinking coffee.
Yes, I actually used it once, but I really don't know if that's going to work with the Thunderbolt. It's a Command F2 enable target mode. I use it with 2 different iMacs, and it works flawlessly for me. And yeah, I have no idea with the new hardware if the requirement change.
Next question.
And Michael Tucker says, has anyone tried to change the style sheet of the vMix call login page? The question came up today in a Facebook group.
Go ahead, Leland.
Yes, we have. Well, Colin has. Let's put it that way. We managed to pull code from the vMix just out of the browser so that we could enter a name and have it automatically put it into a caller slot in vMix. As far as, taking that HTML code and dropping it into any, lead-in page would probably be a simple process. But we still have to determine with the API whether we can direct them to a particular call in the system. And right now we haven't seen the API that we can do that. You can only send it to whichever call you designate in the HTML code. So we're working on that too. Colin, if you wanted to share that HTML code,
I can clarify that a little bit. There are many hidden fields in the code generated for the landing page. The only one that matters is the number, the 9-digit number, and the rest of the form is totally irrelevant. So as long as you direct it with that call number, it's handled on the server side. In terms of routing to what vMix instance and so on. I actually liked Leland's ultimate solution of providing the destination link in a PDF to the client. That way you can brand it any way you want. You don't have to rely on a web page. You don't have to mess around with the form at all, or expect or worry about changes to the interface. Still, it's a little.
What he's referring to. Yeah, just to can clarify what Colin's referring to, there's I created a PDF document that showed the actual layout within the production, so people knew their location on screen. You just use the vMix call short link, which is provided in the vMix call center, and just drop that into a text link or a graphic on the page so that they don't have to worry about anything. The password's already included in that. So they just click on it and it brings it right up on their device, whether it's a mobile device or a PC. And that seemed to work pretty well.
That's great. All right, we're gonna start accelerating. Go ahead,
Okay,
next
I think
question.
this is about the chat system from yesterday. Well, okay, now something just changed. I have a Rode Video Mic ME. I can't get good sound. Volume on both my Pixel 4 XL phone using the USB-C adapter. I also tried with my Insta360 1R using the Insta360 adapter into the, oh good grief, a bunch of things. SC3 Rode adapter into the mic. Volume is way, way low. Any thoughts?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, you could try using an inexpensive headphone booster. They're meant for to go the other way. They're meant to boost up, little earbuds and things like that. But we found that for some of these lavs that are really underpowered, that you could actually use a headphone booster and it'll take the levels up a little bit, and it's nice.
And how's the
cheap.
noise when that happens?
Well, it depends on the model that you get, but it's going to
Right.
be certainly better than trying to max out the gain stage on your phone.
Right.
So it's just a little cheap way. Those things are like, under $50.
Great. The next question.
A. Mitchell says, when using chat, I think they're talking about the chat system from yesterday. Input is at the bottom of the page. When asking questions, input is at the top of the page.
So this has to do with the way that the text flows. So the chat's on the bottom because the way we read it, it pops up at the bottom. It pops up at the bottom. So the idea is that you visually can, when you type it in, you see it immediately right above where you typed. It's at the top because questions are newest on top going down. So it's at the top, so that same thing, when you type it in, it pops in right below where you wrote it. So so I don't know if we're going to change that right now. Because there is a process of why we did it that way, is so that it's mostly so that the user has instant. It's so the entry appears right next to where it was entered. And the flow of those things are different. I don't think I want to have either one of them go differently. I think the question should be on the top. The newest question should be on the top, and the last chat should be on the bottom. I think if we made people read upward, it would really freak them out. I know it would freak me out. So anyway, Jeffrey.
One thing with the Q&A, as you're typing the question, it's refreshing. So if you're starting to type, you're not noticing what's below you. But with the chat, you can as you see the chat, you can see the text there, and then you're typing, so you can refer to that. So it's kind of more of a mind play on anything.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, next
Laura
question.
Seal says, recommendations for a sub $150 headset mic for Zoom meetings.
I will say that, yeah, here's the thing. It depends on how long you want it to last and what it's going to go through. But I think that we have been researching for our stuff, and, I think Colin's been successful with it. Other people have been successful. This is a pile, and someone can post the link. I posted it in the mic section inside of Discord. We should post it again probably, but this is a pile $15 headset and another $15 USB interface. I don't know if all combinations work. I can tell you that this combination works pretty well. We have noticed that people are having problems with consistency. So when we send these out to people, we've just started sending them out for a show next week. We just send them 2. And we could even send them 3 if we wanted to, but we send them like 2 at a time, so that if one isn't as good as the other one, we have them use the other one. And so they're not super consistent. They are, I use the dual layer one. I know that I don't use single layer because I'm always afraid it's going to swing out. But this is a $30 solution. The next step up, I believe, is the Samsung 10. I want to say it's the 10T, which is about $100. And I have it here. I should compare all of them together. I think it is marginally better than the Pile as far as sound. And then the next one up that a lot of us use are the DPAs, the 4066s. That we haven't tested a ton of stuff in between those. So there's kind of like, oh, it's under $150, or oh, it's really expensive. And remember that with how is anyone getting how are people getting the Samsung? It feels like there should be a way to have a simple USB interface for that Samsung, but it's got it requires some power, and it's not just a regular 1/8" jack. It's kind of a complex little system there. So I'm not sure how we would get the Samsung in without some kind of more expensive interface. Mike?
Yeah. What do I sound like? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This MPOW headset was also $30 on sale. It's about $50. It's a call center headset with a USB adapter like that built into it with this the same sort of adapter. So it
interesting,
works.
and interesting enough, I do think I'd love to hear it in your environment, but I think this Pile sounds better than that headset.
Yeah, it's a call center headset, but I mean that's alternative you have, and I mean there are other ways. But I mean there are ways. If you're going to spend $30, you can probably just as well use a USB headset like this.
Yeah, but what I like about this one is I would say that low profile. So the you know, like we when we're prepping people for events, we almost try to always get their headphones off their head, you know, like as quickly as possible. So we want in-ear somehow, we want small headset. We've really gotten to the point where we're really fine with headsets. They are and the reason we've been looking at the Piles is because they're pretty acceptable as far as the look goes at this point when people are used to them, and they definitely improve the sound, especially in a roomy location. Next question.
Robert Baker says, you've opened a can of worms here, Alex. Will tomorrow's vMix session be recorded and available on YouTube later? I have church streams to do on Saturdays and I can't attend any of the office hours.
We're gonna the only one that I can't promise all of them are. The vMix one will be opened and we may do a second stream. I have to talk to Steve. I don't know if we can put Steve Bays on YouTube. Okay. So I think that one that's got some issues. So but I think that we can definitely I'll talk to him about that and see if he's comfortable with it. Otherwise, I know that we can go through vMix. I'm sure that Leland's okay with it, and then we may do another stream or whatever. But we're trying to move basically to all the hours being available on YouTube. So we'll work out that one, but otherwise everything else will be on YouTube. Next question.
Michael Jones says, Alex, can I plug a Heil PR-40 directly into a Sony A7 II? What type adapter is needed?
Well, so you already asked for an adapter, and then you asked if we could do it directly. Those are two opposing questions. You know,
you knew it was going to be no. No,
you just need. So here's the deal: is you need some sort of conversion from XLR to you got a Heil, it's XLR. You've got to convert that to an 1/8" jack, I believe, to get it into the thing. You know, our choice, the more expensive choice is the Mix Pre 3. A lot of us use for that type of thing, but there's less expensive ones as well. Mickey and then Jason.
Yeah, technically speaking, you can with an adapter, cabled adapter with the proper wiring, can plug it directly into an A7S because it's a dynamic microphone. It doesn't need phantom power. It's not going to sound great because the preamps on those things are not really meant for that. But you can get it done if you want, if you have to. Hit me up on Discord if you need wiring diagrams.
And the thing I will say is that audio is super important, probably the most important thing you do when you're at a shoot. And the reason that we do good recorders with good preamps before we put it into the cameras, we just use the camera audio as scratch so that we can sync everything back up if we need to, because these cameras have all cameras have horrible preamps. And preamps are the thing, right? Like, you know, like they are the thing. Like, and I think that we want to keep on saying this over and over and over again. It's all about the preamp. And the best mobile preamp, in my opinion, right now is all the Sound Devices stuff. Their Cashmere preamps are super quiet. And as far as mobile, if you're going to take it on the road or whatever, but there's lots of other ones. But as you start going down in price, what you're going to end up with is cheaper preamps. And when you do that, you're adding noise, you're reducing dynamic, range. There's all kinds of things that happen to your audio. So I'd highly recommend, a good preamp. I think Zoom makes some reasonably good stuff, but it's not at the same level as what Sound Devices does. But but you can use it at a lower cost. But if you're just getting started, look for something. You can probably find something in the 200, 300 range. If you're serious about your audio, then into a camera. And there's a lot of high-end recorders and everything else, but if you're serious about your audio into your camera, I'd look at the Mix Pre series to do that, because the preamps are kind of amazing. And Mickey, and then Jason, and then Doug, and then Jeffrey, and then we'll move on.
And yeah, I don't have a view of the question right now, but I believe Sony makes an adapter that hooks onto the hot shoe of those Sony cameras that gives you XLR inputs. It would be better preamps, more control, a better balanced connection. But if you can hook up, a mixer before that, then even better.
Especially a recording mixer that you can record to. So because you're going to have line stuff that goes, you've got oftentimes an unbalanced line going into it. So you can pick up all kinds of noise literally in 6 inches to get to your thing if you've got power and all kinds of other stuff around it. So there is nothing that's been worse for us than shooting, especially if you're using like an A7S, if that's what you're using. I missed that. An A7S is going to produce unbelievable image, for an interview. You want unbelievable audio. That's all I'm saying. Jason and then Jeffrey.
Now it's worth mentioning. So, okay, Mickey is a master when it comes to like wiring. The Heil PR-40 requires an unholy amount of gain. So like, yeah, exactly. What guys got in there is your best bet first, no matter what.
Okay, and then we're gonna start moving really fast because I realize we're a little behind. Go ahead, Doug, and then yep, that's great.
Yeah, that's the adapter I was talking about.
That's great.
So this MXL mic mate has a XLR on one end and USB on the other, and it comes with the adapter. So this is my headset is a 4-pin, so 4-pin to XLR. So this one comes with it, and it's.
But that's a USB though, but not into the 1/8 inch for the camera.
Correct. Yeah, no 1/8 inch. Yep.
Does it have phantom power, Jeff? Doug, it has phantom power.
It gets its power from the USB.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna get that one instead.
Yeah, it's
Jeffrey.
like 50, 60 bucks.
And we're gonna start moving pretty quickly. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
If it doesn't matter wired or wireless, of course wired is always the best option. But if you want to go wireless, there's a lot of wireless adapters that you can get that'll go straight in the camera, and of course they'll provide the phantom power for your PR-40.
And in an inexpensive area, I'll let that go. Anyway, go ahead, Elaine, and then real quick, then we're gonna move fast.
A real quick question: does the A10 Mini, which finally showed up, if you plug it in the 1/8 inch for mic in, does it provide phantom power then? Because if you go to an adapter, no, it doesn't. Okay, stick to the camera.
Yeah. Next question.
Attila says, what's currently the standard workflow for editing these massive 4K files if your editors are remote? Do people send SSDs via courier like it's 1999?
Often, yes. FedEx is still the best CDN in the world as far as getting files around. So anyway, Jeffrey and then Bill.
It was a Jazz Drive in 1999.
Yeah, exactly. We've gone from SideQuest and to SSDs, or even you can even now get pretty high capacity and get a lot into little SD cards. They're really cheap in FedEx to move things around.
I still have a zip drive in a box somewhere.
We have to move real quickly. 15 seconds each. Jeffrey, Bill, Stuart, and Mickey, but 15 seconds each.
I know Premiere. I don't know about Final Cut, but Premiere Pro has a proxy area where you can send them the proxy files, which are smaller, and then they can edit and bring it back.
Yep. Bill?
You can still do that in Final Cut Pro too, but I've been using the transfer service from Frame.io, and they have a way to saturate bandwidth through a thing that's very much like bit torrenting that gets large files up and down. But still, if you're in gigabit file or gigabyte size or terabyte size files, nothing's going to really do that except mailing it.
Stuart?
Wrap it in the box that it came in from the manufacturer. If it was good enough for their shipping, it'll be good enough for your postal service. And I've gone green again.
Okay,
New
Mickey.
NDI drivers last night, so that might be doing something strange.
Yes, absolutely. Mickey, quickly.
Yeah, definitely a proxy workflow would help. You can do the math of file size, total file size, and your upload speeds. You can do the math on how long it will take. But if you do have to send a drive physically to the editor, just keep in mind that countries vary in terms of their import and export laws and what the hoops you have to go through if you're sending media. And we have to deal with that every single time we have to send media overseas. It's really convoluted.
And in the really expensive world of online editing, we've started to research for a project, Blackbird MAM. And it is you put everything online, everybody edits it online, it's published online, and it's expensive. But we're probably going to try to bring those guys in at some point and talk to them, because just so you know what's there, it's kind of the high end online solution for that. Next question.
They're jumping around like crazy right now. Sorry. Alex, a point of there are people that are copying messages from other places.
Yeah, just
and putting,
if they copy them from somewhere else, you just delete them.
Okay, A. Mitchells, I'm dismissing some of your stuff. Is there any hardware anywhere that the hardware talked about in office hours is collected for later reference?
Discord.
Discord.
A lot of stuff on Discord, yeah.
There's like incredible amounts of links on Discord that are related to every show that we do. So, so anyway, yeah, that's where you want to look for it. Next question.
Kenneth Jones says, what's the difference between choosing 30 FPS and 29 point something or other in OBS? 2997.
In OBS, I don't know how much it will matter. You know, like, to be honest with you, I think that 2997 is drop frame versus, you know, go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, 2997 actually exists because of color subcarrier back when they were trying to make black and white TV still show up when they had the color subcarrier added to the NTSC signal. So yeah.
And now it's really stuck in. The biggest reason that we worry about it now is audio. You know, so the audio sync, you'll lose audio sync if you don't run it at drop frame. You know, typically, and so that usually becomes the problem that you get yourself into. Jason and then Bill.
Long story short, without the history lesson, if you're using drop frame somewhere, it has to be used everywhere. That's it.
It can. The one thing to know is that your online streaming, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, if you're using OBS or whatever, is 30 frames a second. It's 30 frames a second if you give it 25, 23.98, 24, 30, 29 and 7. It's 30 frames per second, unless you set it to 60, and then it's 60 frames a second. But they're whole frames, and they don't care. And we've talked to the engineering there about it, and all the platforms are the same. Like, it's going to be 30 or 60. They're not now. Later content, maybe, you know, your post maybe in 24. If you upload something in 24 to YouTube, it'll be 24. But the question is, does your TV show that anyway? But you just need to know that when you're streaming, your streaming platform is always 30. You know, or 30 or 60, depending on whether you're doing games or not. And only do 60 if you're doing games. Bill.
Yeah, drop frame is the worst named technology in the world because it actually doesn't drop frames. It drops frame numbers, and it has to do, back in the broadcast days, with making sure that after hours and hours of broadcasting, the real clock didn't drift from the video clock internally. They're all the same frames. You never drop frames.
Yeah, it's just how they're referred to. Yep, absolutely. Stuart and then Mickey, really quickly.
We stream out in 25 frames a second, and it's done it again. This is hilarious. 25 frames a second. Otherwise, we get flicker with our lights here in Australia. Even our YouTube, when you go to download it, it's in 30 frames.
Yeah, and
it does the conversion for you.
And what we do when we're in Australia and Europe is we stream at 30, but we change our shutter speed so that we can get under the flicker. Mickey?
Yeah, I just wanted to support what Bill was saying earlier. Drop frame when used with frame rates like 2997 is just a difference in labeling of the frames. It's more used, as Bill was saying, it's more used for when for example, for live broadcasts, when you need the time code to match exactly the time of day.
Right. Next question.
Chris Russo says recommendations on software to adjust the internal webcam settings on a MacBook Pro 2017 and FaceTime HD camera. I think those are pre-T2 chips, so they will use the
webcam settings I think should work there. Webcam settings or manual camera are the two that I've used. I think that they're kind of equal in quality. I think manual camera is a little nicer because it pops up in a little preview window, but they're both like $7. So those would be the ones that I would recommend. Any other? All right, next question.
A. Mitchell says, is it worthwhile posting the Discord link again with a new expiration time in order to include those that have just time to come in for the education power hour?
We're not going to change that right now. Okay. Next question.
Moving on. Rick Combs, I have a couple of Canon VIXIA cameras that do not support either the Rode or the Diety shotgun mics. Is there a workaround for this? It works fine in the A7 Mini and also the PC, just not directly into the VIXIA. Wanting to record directly from the VIXIA.
No.
It doesn't work. Do you know why it doesn't work?
No, I don't know why it doesn't
VIXIA does not supply plug-in power.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So if you find a plug-in dynamic mic, you could use that. but you know, in terms of getting any reach, yeah, you won't.
Next question.
What was the Microdot connection? What was the Microdot connection created for? I guess.
Is it a standard?
Is it a standard?
I don't know if it's a standard.
Oh,
it's
why? He says,
DPA or YY. I mean, DPA created it so that it could easily you could easily add adapters to its microphone. But it's I don't think it's any specific standard. And I think a couple of different groups use that standard. Go ahead, Nikki, real quick.
Well, I just did a quick Google search, and Wikipedia says it was originally created for instrumentation and aerospace use.
Okay, so it's not even owned by DPA. We think of it as DPA because it's the only place I saw it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So So it's useful. It's just that we only see it mostly with, I guess, Samsung's using it as well, but I don't think the two of them are the same. Like you can't plug one into the other. I don't believe. Tucker.
A lot of the manufacturers of headset mics and high profile lavs do the cable independently, and that's one of the big reasons why they've leaned toward it is the ability to replace a cable without replacing an element.
And the real issue that we've had with it is just that it is the source of almost every audio glitch that you have with a wireless mic setup. I mean, the wireless is its own problem, but the Microdot connection into the whatever adapter it's in, if you use a Microdot, you have to tighten it every single time you use it. Like you just have to go over there and tighten it all the time to make sure that it stays there. Or as some of our folks have done is you just decide that's the adapter you're going to use and use Loctite. and then it works all the time. Jeffrey.
I'm using a Micronic headset, and it has the Microdot to it, and I just had to replace the cable on that. So it has a rubber washer that helps with that. But the other thing is they actually emailed me back and they said, are you sure that you're using the right headset? Because it can cause phase issues.
Right. Last question, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Is there anyone running audio sine sweeps to do any room calibrations?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, well, I've run sweeps to find resonances sometimes and find where stuff is buzzing in the room. But a better way to do that is transfer curve. Meyer has source independent measurements. So this allows you to not use tone, but actually use your program so you can run it the entire time. Basically, you take a measurement mic and put it into one channel of your interface. You put the output of your mix, whatever is going into the PA system, into the other channel. You calibrate the delay because it's going to take time for the sound to get from the speakers to the microphones. And then it compares the two of those and gives you frequency response and phase response across those. So you can see how the room is changing your signal no matter what the signal is. So you can run this the entire time through a show.
And one of the things that I'm curious about is how this could be affected possibly by impulse records. I heard about how they were doing impulse calculations inside of the cathedral so that you could hear chants and so on and so forth in the same to reproduce the overall quality. And I'm always curious. I know impulse recording has been around for a long time. This is basically you have a microphone, a measurement mic, you pop a balloon, and it captures. And I feel like it's more than one balloon and more than one time, and a lot of other samples and everything else. But it's essentially popping a balloon and then gathering a lot of what the whole architecture sounds like.
So you're talking about how to fake the space, right?
Which is, yeah, and you see that Logic has a tool that's in there that will do that. But I heard a bit of it, and I'm trying to get a hold of the guys to come in on Tuesday to talk to us about it, the researchers that do it, because I'm kind of obsessed by it now. Jeff and then Bill, and then we're going to move on to our second hour.
Yeah, you're talking about convolution processing. So you capture an impulse response, and an impulse response can actually model an entire system. And actually, they will actually sometimes capture that by running a sweep tone through the system and then deconvolve that, which is a mathematical operation, to get the impulse response. But as long as the system doesn't change over time or doesn't do dynamic processing, an impulse response can actually capture an entire complex system. And then you just replace every sample with the entire impulse response you got, and you get the reverb of that cathedral.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Bill, and then we'll move on.
That focuses on the space and pink noise or some other broadband thing. For what I do, because I do a lot of voice work, is if I go into a new space and can't work in my voice booth, I'm going to do a recording on my microphone in this space so that my voice in this space is what's resonating back to it. Then I'm going to probably toss it into Final Cut Pro 10. I'm going to use the Logic plugins there, put a channel EQ on it. I'm going to narrow the Q on a band in the middle somewhere, sweep it back and forth until I can make it sound horrible. Once I make it sound horrible because there's some room resonance, I'm going to pull that same thing down and lose that room node. So it's a matter of tuning the room to my voice rather than tuning it to a standard. That's my technique.
And then Tucker, go ahead.
Yeah, just the method that he's talking about, which I think is absolutely perfect and really important, is our ears are way better at hearing bad than they are at hearing good. So when I'm teaching, I always say, boost to find, cut to fix. That's the thing. Boost to find, cut to fix.
That's great. All right, now we are shifting gears. If you are an educator and you wanted to be in the panel, we don't usually do this on the weekdays, but we're making an exception. So you can go ahead and raise your Zoom hand if you want to be on the panel, or you can stay there and ask questions and vote. But in the next minute or so, if you oh, hey Chris, yeah, you're more than welcome to jump on and be part of the conversation. So I think,
Alex, I'm gonna have to step out.
You're leaving, Chris?
I have things I need to take care of. So sorry.
Hey, Phil, can you handle the questions?
Sure will. Yeah.
Okay. See you later, Chris. We don't need you anymore.
Bye, Chris.
All right. Thanks, Chris. All right. You're muted. All right. Okay, so we're going to move into our education hour. Again, as a reminder for those of you who are here, we have decided to add this to the second hour of Saturday as well. Some educators can't make it on Friday, as well as there's just too much to cover right now. And so we've added the second hour. So just a reminder, tomorrow, same times, same place, we're going to do another hour of Q&A. So Phil, let's go ahead and jump into the education hour. So what we're doing now is education questions. This time we were way behind last time. So my request for the panelists is to be pretty succinct in your responses, because we want to make sure that we try to get to all the questions. We'll start slowly because we don't have a ton of them in there right now. Hint, hint. So your job, if you're just getting here as an educator, is that your job in the attendees is to ask questions. Like, that's your job. It's the only job. You can just sit here and watch, but you got to ask questions or vote on them. So vote the questions up. What we answer first, and generally more slowly, are the ones that are at the front end. What we answer quickly and the ones at the back end. So anyway, again, raise your hand if you want to get in. I think we have everybody here, and we'll get started. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then Tucker, and then we'll start going to the questions. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I sent you the unanswered ones from last week via Discord, so we can mix those in.
We can if we run out. Otherwise, we'll take the live ones and see how far we go. Go ahead, Tucker.
I just wanted to see, do you want to do like a super speed sound check for Tim and Chris?
Yeah,
or do you want to just cut straight in?
Let's go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me into the second hour.
Okay, if you could open up your Zoom preferences, audio preferences, and just back that level down just a little bit. It's pretty hot. You came in at -14. Our target's -20.
Sure, no problem. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Keep coming down just a little bit.
Just a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's great. Thank you very much. And then Chris, can I get you to do a quick check as well?
Good morning from Tempe, Arizona. How is it sounding?
Yep, that'll work. Level-wise, we're good. It's a little bit roomy, but we'll be good. I love the light.
If you turn
just John
a little
for
away,
a quick check.
Yep, you sound good.
Good check, John. Thank you.
Thank
Chris,
you.
if you turn that a little bit so that your window is not behind you. If you just turn a little bit, you'll be less in shadow, because it just lets the thing adapt. There we go. That's much better. It's great. Okay, so first question.
Yeah, Dustin Royer asks, do you have any recommendations for free and or cheap video screen recording and editing software that's easy to use for a Windows environment? I think that's the main question there.
Emily.
Yeah, so Screencastify is a Chrome extension that lets them record their screens, and then it has, if you pay for the full version, which they gave away for free to teachers until July for the COVID, you can actually edit it and then post it to YouTube or into a Google Drive and then share it. And you can add titles on it and some other little things, but it's very basic and easy for people who aren't tech savvy.
And as you run further down the path on the PC side, I think we've used a lot of Camtasia as well. I don't know what I actually can't tell you what the price is on it, but
that's $170.
$170. Okay, so it's expensive. So
that's just the editor though. You can actually get Snagit, which is also made by TechSmith, which is just their snag capture utility, video capture as well. That's like $60. So
but it's limited in time.
Snagit is like less than 30 for educators.
Oh yeah, exactly. For the educators, it would be half.
Yeah,
and
they
Michael,
do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Doesn't it have a limitation on time, like 10 minutes or something like that? For Snagit, I thought there was a limitation you could do on it.
I don't believe Snagit does. Jing does. That's like a 5-minute recorder. I'm pretty sure Snagit will record as long as.
No, you're right. Sorry, I had them mixed up.
So many options.
Jing is their free option.
Tim.
Another Chrome extension is Loom that does a pretty good job. And then Screencast-O-Matic is one maybe that you were thinking, Alan, about that has the 15-minute time limit for the free version. But one thing that I would recommend for educators getting started is the time limit is a good thing. You want to keep your micro lectures short and targeted to a 6 to 10 minute time block anyway. So using a tool that has a time limit is actually an aid for you.
Yeah, I mean the thing that I often tell clients when I'm talking to them is that you can make things that are easy to create or easy to watch, and you very rarely can have both. So as you make it easier and easier and easier, I'm just going to throw down a screen capture of something and I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to wander through and do what I'm going to do and kind of show it. And I'm kind of wandering through the wilderness. That's super painful for your students at any age. I was watching something that was already edited last night, just a little bit. And I was like, yeah, could have cut another 5 minutes out of that 15-minute piece, and I would have understood it. So you have to remember that you have, as an educator, especially for K through 12 and to some degree college, you are making content for students who watch TikTok. So regardless of all the things, go up to TikTok and watch how-tos. Watch the how-tos, watch the little educational pieces that people put up there, and realize that that's what you're up against. You don't have to reproduce it. You don't have to be as good as they are, but understand that if you go really slow, your students aren't going to watch it. Or they're going to have a really hard time, or they're going to get really upset watching it, because what they're used to and what TikTok has become a great lab for is how to condense an enormous amount of information into a very short period of time. The 1 minute requirement has forced people to think in 1 minute terms, or sometimes even 15-second terms. And it's not a bad idea. I'm working on a whole series right now that I've been planning and I've been failing at internally, where I'm trying to get all of my tips down to 1 minute. So they're 1 minute tips. Everything lives inside. So my little world is in the 60-second. Now, I might give you a playlist that you can go grab and watch it, but there's a whole thought in 1 minute, mostly because I realize that there's a huge number of people and more, and I find myself impatient. I watch TikTok when I bike in the morning before this show, and while I'm biking, I watch TikTok. It's something that keeps me from getting bored. I can't find anything else that makes otherwise I don't like biking. So, but when I watch it, it has made me very impatient, and because I watch YouTubers. We talked about this yesterday, when they do the preamble of what they're about to talk about. As a TikToker, as a TikTok watcher, you're like, I could have watched like 6 videos by the time they finished the preamble, and you're just like, I don't know.
Hi guys, be sure to like and subscribe and yippity yap. Yeah, that takes a minute.
All that stuff has to, and so as a teacher, you also want to think about that though. I think that, people can talk about whether TikTok is a waste of time or not, but know that your students are all watching it, and know that you're measuring up against that, and not that you're going to be able to reproduce it. It's a lot of work to do that. Even the simple things I've done take time. But understand that you can't have a long preamble. You can't do all that stuff. You have to get to the protein of your talk super fast, or people are going to start tuning you out. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, the playlist concept is really good too, because it helps kids differentiate. So if you have a kid who's moving faster, they can jump ahead. If you have a kid who needs to go back, they know where to go back to. So putting together those short clips into a playlist is really the best way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Yes, Roscoe's brother Kenneth Jones says, I know everybody has their favorite everything, but wouldn't it be great to have a set of bronze, silver, gold equipment lists for teachers? Minimum acceptable to best of show, deal with audio and video. Printed somewhere. If only there were a resource.
Yeah, I'm trying to put that. I've been slowly putting together. The pile was actually a big missing piece for me that Colin found of trying to find a really inexpensive mic that I thought was acceptable. And so I'm putting together kind of a grid, and it's exactly what you're talking about, which is, and I'll post it. I'll post what I have the end of this weekend. It's really rough, but it's like, hey, this is cameras that are inexpensive to, lights that are inexpensive to mics that are inexpensive, and kind of start building some guide that we have there. I've been waiting to try to, it's been my fault that the website slowed down, but it's something I want to put on the web, our new website that we're working on, put it up there as one of the first articles of just like, this is whether you're an educator or whether you're a person that's doing this stuff, these are the different levels. And it ranges from the Pile headset mic to, the DPA with a mixed pre, and like, if you go crazy, this is what it looks like. And if you don't go crazy, this is what it, and I'm trying to put up samples and examples and stuff like that, but it's turned into kind of an odyssey on my end. But yeah, I do think that would make a difference for people to kind of decide which one they want. Next question.
David Vessel, what Keynote training resource would you recommend for teachers?
John Idelson.
There's a group run by Apple called Apple Distinguished Educators, and I just put in the chat a link to books that they've done. So there are a number of their publications of educators who are using Keynote. So that's a good source for clever Keynote tips. And
we're testing doing Keynote 1 hour on Monday. If it's successful, we'll do it more often. Like probably turn it into a Saturday hour.
It's amazing. It could be hours and hours and hours.
It can be, and we want to talk about different subjects. There's so many things that I realize that I've been using it since before 1.0, and there's so many things that it does and I even, when I work with really high-end presentation, I still see a bunch of stuff, and I'm sure that as we start talking about it on Monday, so Monday, the second hour will be all Keynote and presentation style and process. But you can make whole, as an educator, whether it's Keynote or PowerPoint and slides, just know that could be the first step of before you have to learn how to use iMovie or Final Cut or whatever. You can really put a whole bunch of ideas into a presentation and move through them. Just don't use so much text. Like your text is your talking, and then have lots of images that keep things interesting and moving. Bill, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I've always thought that Keynote is one of Apple's best expressions of their progressive disclosure idea, which is that it looks simple when you get into it, but as you open up things in the back, it becomes incredibly rich. It's a brilliant design right there.
Next question.
Scott Goff says he works with professors who are showing some initial resistance to doing more interactive learning in their online and in-person classes. Do you have recommendations for increasing buy-in?
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, the cynical answer is change the tenure policies. But the real answer is...
Boom!
That's not going to throw a bottom into this.
No, but I think the real answer is to start small with each of these things. So if you use audience response systems or clickers, take them one step at a time. And the thing that I have to work with is it's not going to feel very good the first time you do it. So make sure you give 2 or 3 lectures before you start to, commit to something feeling, bad or good, and kind of learn with that. But, one little bit of interactivity at a time, and don't go from 0 to 100.
In the school systems that I've worked with, that we've worked with to help people in this process, I will give you the ruthless way that we do this. And you can decide how you want to do it. We take the early adopters, the ones that are excited about it. We have a meeting. You do a presentation on how all this can work and what's possible. And what will happen is you get all the educators together and you do a great presentation. This is what's possible. This is how you can present. This is how you can use your phone. This is how you can use video. And what will happen is all the time, like I've done it, I don't know how many times, and every single time, 4, 5, 10 people will come up after the talk. They're vibrating with what they could possibly do. And then you spend all your energy on them. So you get them equipment, you give them, a forum, you sit there and talk to them. And then you use, people don't like being left behind. Like, so what happens is that they suddenly start doing something that is way beyond what everybody else is doing. And then it's not that the ones that absolutely won't do it, they're way on the far end, but they're the ones that were interested, but then didn't walk up to you. They're the first ones that will get like, hey, can I get into this program? And then the next ones will get into it. And then you slowly burn it. And there's like 20% that will never do that. But you can grow it, but you have to take the ones because the first piece is going to be really hard. And what's great about it is that 15, people, they are excited about it. They're showing it off. And then they are your support staff when you leave. So, like they all know it and they figure it all out and they do all the hard work of figuring it all out. And then they can talk into the listening of the other teachers in a way that I can't. Like they can say, well, this is how I did this and this is how I put this together. But the hard part, when we first started doing this, we tried to persuade all the teachers to do this at the same time. And it just was like a huge amount of resistance. And so what we did is we just found the ones that were excited about it, spent all of our energy on getting them up to speed, and then let them burn through that system, on their own. And that's been a pretty successful, solution and much easier than the other options. Tucker and then John.
Finding a way to give them a safe place to fail at the beginning, I think is important. Giving them small groups of trusted people, trusted peers, because a lot of them just want to save face in front of their peers. So finding a way to do small meetings that they can teach each other and do presentations for each other and get comfortable, at least to a point.
And the thing that we're trying to move towards in this hour is this first experiment is getting to a point where, my goal by September or October is to get to a point where there's an hour like this for educators every single day. That when you're in the middle of working on these things, there's somewhere for you to go to just ask questions. I can't figure out how to do this in Keynote. I can't figure out how to do this video. I'm trying to do this still. And just a place where there might be 20 or 200 or whatever, that are all listening to what the other questions are. Because the power of this huge forum, there's 240 people here and we're all asking questions, is there's people asking questions that you didn't even think of, but you'll get something out of it because you're all in that inquiry together. John? And then Chris.
I've been useful in the higher ed space and using tenure as sort of a way to increase interactivity. Every university has some sort of faculty evaluation that students do in courses. And faculty who are going up for tenure want to make sure they have the highest number there. Faculty like research. So I have a set of research documents that talk about how more interactive classes, students are more engaged, they give higher faculty evaluations. And when faculty realize if they do it, they'll get better evaluations. It will help them get tenure. And I've been very successful in taking some junior faculty who generally are not risk-taking because they want to make sure they get through the system, taking some risks and being more interactive.
Chris, and then Emily, and then Tim.
It occurs to me that if we start with something that faculty are familiar with that is interactive and conversational, like office hours, solving the problem of faculty office hours where the department chair requires you to post the hours. Nobody ever comes until the night before the final. And instead say, okay, we're going to try a video office hours with you. That lowers the bar of resistance because this is really something that is intrinsically interactive. And then when they get through the awkwardness of the first time, it's easier to make the shift to instruction.
Yep, absolutely. Emily?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the failing forward part is encouraged in our districts that we work with, and we pair up those early adopters with each other across districts so that they can meet like once in a while and just go, hey, this is what I did, check it out, and give me some feedback. And those people move forward faster, so that's definitely important. But then the other thing too is like your guys at the K-12 level, we get kids starting to bully the teachers and like, why aren't you doing this? Your class is boring. Like we did this last year. Why can't we do it in this grade? So that's pushed some of our teachers who've been really reluctant to be like, can you come in and show me how to do that one thing? Because the kids won't stop asking me about it.
And that gets back to that whole, take the early adopters and beat the slow movers with them. So anyway, Tim, and then Roscoe.
I like to reinforce the efficiency effect that, a lot of these tools, while they're an investment of time at the front, they pay off in efficiency overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Roscoe?
Yeah, teachers are used to scanning a class. And so if you think about it in Zoom, they're not in speaker mode, they're in gallery mode. And give them the largest monitor you can, because they need to look at faces, they need to read faces, they need to interact with students. Give them an 80-inch monitor if you can, make the names big, give them a chance to look at each student and scan them. I know it's expensive possibly, but it's a real practical thing you can do for them.
And, and the thing is that really also, thinking about, flipping that classroom takes a lot of stress off of it, because, then you're really paying a lot more attention to the students. You get them to, assign the video that you recorded, and then have the discussion. And the closer you can get to more discussion and less just you talking, makes a big difference, regardless of the technology. Now, next question.
Tom Gariello wants to know 24, 30, or 60 frames per second for educational video content.
As a rule, I would say 30, because it's just the standard across so many platforms that it's the most, common standard. 60, unless you're doing sports or something like, or esports or that type of thing, is just a waste of bandwidth. So you're putting twice as many frames into the system. You have a limited budget of bandwidth, and you're putting twice as many frames in that aren't necessarily going to tell a better story. A lot of screens that the kids are using that you're going to put it up against are not going to be able to see 24. They're just not going to play it back that way. So 24 is great for film. We should just leave it there. It doesn't belong anywhere else. Like it really, I mean, I'm not saying that 24 shouldn't be used for film. I think that that's fine. There is no other place other than film that 24 frames per second should be used. It is being rewritten by some server to 30 almost all the time. And so you're just getting bad frames, that are being made up. You're letting a computer put 6 frames a second into your thing that you didn't design. Next question.
Yes, Robin Monkfold says, well, with Corona issues, do you have any ideas on how to connect with new students and do an online team building, important for practical university studies?
I think Zoom's pretty useful for that. So, I mean, like having people, discussing stuff. The hardest part we find a lot of times is getting everybody the same materials so they can work on it together, in those processes. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah. So it really depends on the context, right? If you have 400 new students, you can't really run icebreakers, discussions, things in a single Zoom room the same way. So breaking things down into whatever sections. If you have group work and are good with that, myself and some colleagues we're experimenting with pre-assigning breakout rooms for at least the start of the semester, and just encouraging students to really use their project groups as a new form of social interaction at first, and then we'll see how that sort of breaks up. But being very intentional about creating those opportunities, because they don't happen organically in the same way.
And remember that Zoom, for instance, if you're using Zoom, I would recommend it. So, I mean, highly recommend it. It's for this kind of thing, for what we're doing. You can talk about a lot of other things, but it is the most robust platform to do this in. The security stuff is just based on your settings. So if you set your Zoom right, it's as secure as you need it to be. I've used it in very high level. I've used Zoom with very, very, very high level people that are in secure facilities that have figured it all out, and we had no problems at all. Like, these are, not heads of state, but pretty darn close. So, I think the security stuff at this point is a moot point. I think that it is the best platform right now to use for these types of things, and I highly recommend it. To set that up, you can build very large systems that break into very small Zoom rooms. Now, you may have to do some lifting, but I believe that if you're an educator, just keep your eye out for Blue Melnick. We're going to have Blue come up and talk to us about a project that he did with 22,000 people, 84 rooms that broke into rooms of, I think, 5 or 6 or something like that, all out there and then all back. Now, that's using code that Grant Whitehead worked on with him, as well as other folks, Jeff Keithley, who was there. So we're going to try to get all of those guys in one place at one time to talk about it. But it can scale a lot if with a little bit of work. And so, but those breakout rooms can be. You want to look at Zoom breakout rooms in that area, John, and then we'll move on.
This week, Arizona had a sessions called Learning Man. and they did a wonderful session on improv in Zoom, and great icebreakers. So if you have a chance, it's University of Arizona Learning Man, and I'll try to get the link for that specific webinar. But improv, we were in stitches the whole time, and it was using the power of Zoom.
Yeah, and I think I'm really curious about people doing both improv and acting, in little plays. I've been trying to find the right part of some Shakespeare plays that just try to get some friends together. It'd just be fun to do. Everybody gets their part and does it, and figure out a way that we can kind of play with that editing. I think it could be a really interesting thing to do as an exercise. Just a note with the kind of the follow-up from Robin that said, are there any good resources on different pedagogical approaches? The only thing I'll say about that is that we just have to remember that people have other things they can do right in front of you in a way that you can't get, that doesn't happen in the classroom. So I can make this window smaller. I can be doing something. I can play a game while you're talking. And Zoom has a bunch of attention things that it can do and everything else. But what I would say is that what we're finding over and over again, which is what we see here in this room, is the more you're in a discussion environment, the more people are engaged, and the more you do anything that's passive, the less they're engaged. And so, I will keep on coming back to this, that after 15, 20 years of doing this and teaching in classes, working on education systems, and doing all these things, that flipping the classroom is incredibly important. That you produce videos that the students can watch at their own speed. They can watch it at double time if they understand it. They can rewatch it over and over again if they don't understand some part. And then having it, using the platform, the school time, the classroom time to answer questions is so important. If you're lecturing in your classes, I think you're in a disaster area. I mean, it's just not going to work. You're going to lose them all. And that's part of why. And the kids growing everywhere. We were all calm. I was calm when I was a kid because I just drew. I just ignored them. I did my homework from the last class, and I drew the whole class. And I just looked down. I wasn't listening to you at all. They're not listening to you now. Michael, and then Chris.
Yeah, I think the other point on that thing is, when you're in a classroom, students doing things that are not paying attention can be very distracting to the other students, especially in a university lecture hall. But when everyone is in their own room, the things that they're not paying attention is much less distracting on average, unless it's actually in their camera view. So one of the things is you can lean into the fact that they might be doing some research on Wikipedia or pulling up links. All of us here, you might notice that we looked away, but we're researching things, dropping them in the chat. That's not necessarily. It could be pulling your attention away from the discussion, but it's its own form of interactivity too, and add something. So I would say lean into that as well.
And I do think that what we're seeing here with Q&A and and we're building our own tools for this, but Q&A and chat is incredibly powerful too, because it gives people, even while you're talking and while Michael's talking and while Chris is talking and Emily's talking, everyone else is talking too. This little chat's going on, and there's more questions and people are thinking about it. And I think that ties into more engagement. Go ahead, Chris.
Something that's worked beautifully with my adult students is to let them know at the beginning of a course that the prime time for learning is not during the 3 hours a week that we're face-to-face, used to be face-to-face. The prime time for learning is all those other hours that come after we meet face-to-face and in preparation for our next get-together. And I lay it out that the time we spend together in the same room or in the same Zoom room is about two things. It's about reporting what you thought and did since last we met. And it's about preparing yourself to go do the things you're going to do as soon as this meeting is over.
And I think that's one of the big values that we have in Discord, that we have here with our group, is that this conversation is happening 24/7. It's something for teachers to think about, whether, for text chatting and whether it's Discord or Slack or something else, that the conversation about what we're doing here, whether it's education or microphones or whatever, there's this whole world of 600 of us that are constantly talking about it all day, every day. And so that conversation, it's not even the 3 hours that we do every day here. It is, happening the whole time. And so thinking about ways to do that in your classroom, I think, and with the students could be useful, because the hard part is that people forget what they were trying to figure out by the time they get to another class, and so figuring out ways to do that is important. Go ahead, Bill.
I am still learning, even though I can't take my eyes off Doug Ferguson's cat.
That's great. It is great that I didn't notice the cat until then. Look at that cat. He's so like, yep, I got this. He's like totally, oh, there's two of them. There we go. All right, next question.
Chris Sanders, what are the minimum technical requirements to ensure live streaming of a hybrid secondary school lesson to deliver good educational outcomes? Resubmitted as marked and answered from previous hour. Oh, he resubmitted the question from the previous hour.
The minimum requirements are a webcam, a good mic, it is so hard to watch these hybrid classes with all this echo, and so it is like, I watched all of these and all these, I've been watching the Yale ones and the MIT ones and the Harvard ones for a decade, and it's just ugly. And they're getting much better because they've been doing it for a long time and they've been figuring it out. And but the audio is everything. I'm just going to keep on saying that the audio is everything, for what you're doing. So make sure that you have good audio. Listen to it. Have other people listen to it. Come up here and have us listen to it. Come in for mic checks. But it is so important to have good audio so that people can hear what you're saying. It's creates, that's the Zoom. When they call Zoom fatigue, it's bad audio. That's what it is. It's bad audio. And so. So I would worry about that. I will say every time someone brings up hybrid that it's a horrible idea. So it's just a hybrid it should all be in room or all online. I've done over 1,000 hybrid events, and I can just tell you that the online audience across the board, almost all the time, is going to get a short shrift of that. It isn't, you put one person in the room with a camera and the speaker will look at that person the whole time, and it creates passive attention, so the online audience will immediately disengage because you're not looking at them, and it's only one person, and as soon as you have more than one, they will completely disengage. Not completely, but you're getting, like, literally, if you think that you've got 10 in the room and 100 out, and that's okay, not okay. Michael, Roscoe, and Jeff.
Yeah, minimum is hard because you could do it with nothing, but I'd say if you are streaming something, be very intentional about that internet connection, because what you don't realize is, especially if it's a physical classroom, you might be okay to use your slides or something, but streaming that video. The main thing I'd say though is, if you want to do hybrid, is make sure that you have a second monitor of some sort right in your lecture podium, so that if you don't have help, you have something to monitor, whether that's people's faces, text chat comments, Q&A, something like that. The other minimum requirement is a teaching assistant. Because someone in that room to help you maximize that online experience, they can be a very good proxy.
And one thing that you'll see in some ways that is a hybrid environment here is that we have a bunch of attendees that are not in the panel and then the panel. And one of the things that we learned to do pretty early on was that we prioritize all the questions in the Q&A, not in the panel. The panel, in the early days of office hours, we would go back and forth between the panel, but it left the online audience. It was too passive for our online audience. And so we learned very quickly everybody has to put questions into the text so that they're all on an even playing field, and we get to them and we're able to process them faster. But we only open it up to questions in the panel when we're out of questions in the Q&A, because it helps engage that online audience. Roscoe, and then Jeff, and then John, and then Elaine.
Yeah, something that hadn't occurred to me, my daughter brought up. She teaches algebra, and she needed a document camera. And we haven't talked a lot about that. So what are your feelings on adding a document camera to this mix of basic technology?
I think you definitely can. That can be as simple as a C920 pointed, mounted over top of what you're doing, or even an iPhone that is on NDI or whatever. Those are all work. I will say that, and I will have it up for next week because I'm getting some of my stuff back next week. I will show you my version of that, which is that I've got a switcher and I've got stuff. I'm not saying a document camera with a webcam that you can cut to is enough, but I'm saying that there are, as you start adding 4 some teachers who are ready to play hard, or if you're doing corporate, or if you have budget in your system or whatever, starting to get something like an A10 mini with a couple cameras of a close-up of something that you're doing, and everything else can transform what you can do online and how you can respond to the students. Go ahead, Jeff, and then John.
I'm just going to pick up on what Michael was saying about needing assistance, because running a classroom with only people in the class is a full-time job. Running a purely online live synchronous lecture is a full-time job. Trying to manage both of those, paying attention to students in the classroom, paying attention to your lecture, switching cameras, following the chat, answering questions in the chat, all of that is way too much for one person. You need a teaching assistant, someone to handle those.
If you look at office hours, Phil is asking the questions. Mickey is doing the edit. Mike Andrews is grabbing links. There's all kinds of things that are happening. There's a whole bunch of different people. Tucker does the sound checks. There is this spread out of this because that makes a better show. John, and then Tucker, and then Elaine. Sorry,
just going to do a ditto. I'll date myself. Everybody needs an Ed McMahon.
Right.
Hey now. And it could be another student, or it could be a teaching assistant, or you could rotate it. It gives power to the student. So I recommend that each class period, the faculty member pick the person who's going to be the question answer like you do, or a respondent, or something like that.
And the thing is that what you're trying to do as a teacher, or when I'm trying to do this, when I'm trying to just, I wouldn't call myself a teacher as much as just holding court with everybody. What you're trying to do is allow whoever's running the event, whether that's a teacher or a speaker, to be totally present. Like, I don't even check my texts during this. I'm like totally paying attention. And so I'm trying to have other people help with all the other things. So the only thing you saw yesterday, how much of a difference it made when I got distracted by my system that I was trying to set up. It was an entirely different show, and you guys wouldn't keep coming if I kept on doing that. So, it just would be like this, and what makes this work is that I've got a great team that is slowly building around what I'm doing, and then I'm able to just stay present with everybody for 3 hours. Go ahead, Tucker, and then Elaine.
Yeah, whenever you do look at doing document cameras, there are specific individually built document cameras. One of the most important features that those have is really good lighting that doesn't cast shadows whenever you're working on it. So if you do like a C920, make sure you do kind of a double lighting system.
Yeah, lighting on either side. And that can be really inexpensive tube lighting. It doesn't have to be, something that's super expensive. Another thing, if you're in K through 12, remember those teaching assistants can be your kids. They're pretty technical. They will love doing it. My kids love working on my projects with me, and they're 10. They've been working on projects with me since they were 6. Where kids love being useful, and give them the opportunity to be useful, and they'll jump on it, and you'll find that they probably will learn it faster than you. My kids start behind me, but got ahead of me really quickly on a lot of things. So Elaine, and then John.
That's exactly what I just told my teachers last time we met, is get one, because next to the microphone, an assistant, because just like Jeff said, you can't manage all of those pieces and do a good job at all of them, and then you're distracted by either looking at the A10 mini or looking at your content or next thing. So by having sponsor one of your kid or one of your other adult teacher, and you know what, they suddenly become more involved into the course, and then the next week you can have a different one. And I think that's the most important thing, because you can damage training sessions if you're too busy doing all kinds of other things.
And the kids love doing it, and there's no reason not to have them helping you with that, and they love responsibility. I mean, that's, especially it's for the kids that are responsible, but the point is there'll be some kids that want to do it, some kids that don't. That's fine. Don't try to force everybody to do it. That's also what I've seen people do that in their systems. Everybody has to take a turn. Just take the ones that are interested in it, and the ones that raise their hand, and give them the opportunity to have that accountability, and they're going to love it, and they're going to keep on, and get a bunch of them doing all the little things that need to be done, and they'll be more engaged in the process, and you'll make a better classroom.
And it's a teaching opportunity for you to teach them that too, and more will come up out of the shadow or the sideline. Say, hey, maybe I'm going to give this a try, or maybe all I'll do is read the questions. However you do it, get them involved.
And I just will remind everybody that I learned a lot of things in school, but the most powerful things I've learned is my ability to produce keynotes and talk. And so kids learning how to do these new media tools and new communication tools is as important as reading, writing, and arithmetic. John?
Well, I was just going to give a plug for using your children to help you. My son helped me throughout my whole college teaching career, and my daughter also. But it worked out really well for my son now. What can I say?
Yeah, absolutely.
I taught him how to set up CUC me in middle school, and now he's CTO of Zoom.
Yeah.
So on the copy stand cameras, there's a company called Hovercam. There'll be other people doing this. What's real interesting is they've embedded Zoom into their copy stand software, and it's very clever. And their copy stand cameras have lights built into them, but the Hovercam, what I really like about it is you have the camera aiming down, but that it internally in its implementation of Zoom within its product does the dual picture, so it does an automatic insert, and it's very clever.
That's great.
I put a link in the shot in the
thanks,
chat.
Chad. That's great. Greg?
Yeah, just as an addendum to this, are there any advantages to using the webinar over the Zoom meeting for classes, or how do we feel about that?
You know, I think it depends on the size of the class. So if you're doing a class for a standard class of 50, or less, I would probably lean towards 50 or less. I'd probably lean towards meetings. We were 50 or less for like a week, for office hours, and we tried it. I find that I will say, so my wife runs Zoom meetings all day for a meditation center. I, use mostly webinar. And so the two of us talk back and forth. I view meetings as kind of chaos. Once it gets to a lot of people, but it does have the advantage of being able to break into small groups. So you can, if you're doing meetings and you want to have your classes break into pairs, break into fours, you can predefine those. You can move people around. So if you want to have some stuff where they're all going to work together and have that thing where they used to pull all their desks together and talk about something and then come back to you with something, that is where meetings is going to be way more powerful currently. I can't imagine that we're not going to eventually get individual rooms in webinar. It's just that I think that the whole bunch of new requirements hit Zoom, and I think that I don't have any inside information, but I think that seems like a natural thing. But right now, what I would say is if you want to do breakout rooms, you need meetings. When you have a really large group and I would say over 50 or 100, I would definitely move to webinars because a lot of people just aren't ready to be on camera. I do think in a class structure for kids, that would worry me a little bit of not having the video on and not having them be there. So I don't think that would really work. I think that it has to, but for college, and above and stuff like that, I'd probably, with a lot of people, again, you don't have Q&A. Now we're going to fix that soon. So soon everyone's going to have Q&A. so it won't, with or without Zoom. So that's coming either way. So that'll be less of a thing. Michael and then Tim.
Yeah, so I've done regular meetings with up to 300 or 400 myself. And that, I honestly, with college age students, it works fine. Most of them just don't turn on their video. If you want to interact with the people that are actually in the class, then they either need to be panelists in your webinar, or you would need to use a meeting. Q&A is the main advantage of the webinar, but if you're a panelist and everyone were sort of in that mode, it wouldn't really work. The breakout rooms, though, for education are the main reason that if you have under 200, I would default to always using a meeting because you never know when that function may be handy. Above 200, it's not enabled. And I have no idea if John knows anything else, but there is a Zoom support doc saying that they don't intend to add breakout rooms to webinars, but of course that may change at any time.
Go ahead, John, I'll let you respond to that.
I will not respond. I will direct people to the ASU event. Yesterday, the Zoom team did a slide presentation, and they talked specifically about these areas.
Thank you very much. Tim? Can you put a link into that? John, can you put a link to where that is?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, great. Tim and then Mickey.
As you said, the main difference with the webinar tool is the Q&A, but the webinar tool is more expensive, so a lot of schools don't have like site licenses or licenses for every teacher to have webinars. So one of the things that I've found is using the Q&A tool in Google, built into Google Slides in meetings, works really well. It has the vote up and down feature that Alex likes as well.
And if you look at, we'll be using the Q&A tool that we're testing internally tomorrow. So tomorrow and Sunday. So if you're watching this and you want to see my take on at least the front end, we're not showing the back end yet, but the front end, you'll see it there. It'll keep on evolving pretty quickly. Obviously, we're trying to get it ready for school year. Mickey?
Yeah, just to add to what Michael was saying, this may be more relevant to younger students than college level students, but being in a meeting would require the students to have a bit more discipline, and they have to unmute themselves. They have to you know make sure things aren't inappropriate in their video. um with webinars, you'd be able to have more control, but then you sacrifice the instant interaction that you would have in a regular meeting.
And we're the funny thing that we're going to see how it goes this year with students online. Like, you can imagine, my setup is somewhat simple, but you can imagine how competitive I plan to be in September when my kids go back to school. Because part of what I see is a lot of chaos, and so my kids are going to be pretty well lit with a pile mic and a basic background. And I think that for students, the new, like, who's dressing and how is going to be lighting, background, audio in classrooms. And I plan to test that and see basically what chain reaction occurs there. I'm trying to keep it simple and not expensive, because I don't want it to be like this crazy, arms race for the kids. But so I'm trying to keep it into, like, what can I do for $50 that just has them, if they're in that classroom every single day, how do they not be a distraction to the thing? So anyway, I'll give you guys behind the scenes as we work on that, but it's gonna be like seamless gray paper, not something crazy expensive, and pile mics and little lights that I can buy at Target, that kind of thing. Anyway, next question.
John Brumman wants to know, what is the minimum size monitor you can use to see the entire gallery in Zoom for a class size of 30?
Well, I mean, you can see it at 15 inches, but I would consider the minimum that I would want to use is probably a 30. One thing to think about is how far away if you have a camera set up and everything else, how far away it is. As you make that monitor larger, it means that your eyes will go away from the camera to look at people down below. So one of the things that we built a long time ago that we're looking at bringing back, or at least publishing the design. I'm not going to build it. I don't want to create it, but we're going to probably publish the design that we used, is a giant teleprompter. So 55-inch, 55-inch teleprompter. I have to go back and find all the bits and pieces. We built it all, for a client where we built a bunch of them. Now ours literally rolled out, and you hit a button and they just came up. So they were for executives. And so you could just have a 55-inch teleprompter that they could be in a call like this and look at everybody straight on. But I do think that we can make that relatively inexpensive. This gets into going into a classroom and using it. I'm not saying teachers should do this, but the thing to know is that teleprompters are expensive. The only functional part of the teleprompter that is really expensive is all the things around it. It's a piece of silvered glass that you can buy for $30. And it just has to be at a 45-degree angle from the monitor. So if you have a cheap TV or a cheap monitor or whatever, and you put it down flat, and you just have to figure out how you're going to prop a 45-degree silvered glass, and then you get a camera right behind it, and you tent the camera with cloth, and it will work. So I'm working on trying to show how to do that relatively inexpensively, so that and we used to print them, so we're hoping to publish some of those, the printer designs and everything else, so people can use that more. But for teachers, the eye contact is super important. If you can figure out, the more you can figure out how to have, straight eye contact, the better. John, and then Mickey.
I discovered something that is amazing. If you have a Samsung Smart TV, there's a way to get into the technician repair, and it does a mirror on the large screen monitor. So you don't need any other device. You just go into the repair setting and it mirrors it, and then you just put a big sheet of glass in front of it.
And I don't use it as teleprompter. I just use it to put the Zoom folks in.
Well, that's what I do. But
right.
To me, I was thinking, you have to pay $300 to flip the mirror on the standard thing. Samsung's TVs does it automatically. And 32-inch one is amazing.
And a lot of monitors have it hidden somewhere to flip those. Jeff, and then Mickey.
There is a minimum CPU requirement to have more than 25 view in Zoom. I'm looking for the link for that. But
Yeah,
I'll put it
I can
when
post the link in the chat.
Thanks, Mickey.
Next question.
Troy Warrior, how do you connect an Apple TV to a VGA projector? Just an adapter cable.
I think there's HDMI to, there you go.
VGA adapter cable.
That's it. There you go. HDMI to, and how much is that guy?
Looks like it's about $50 or $34.
There you go. That's how you connect it. Next question.
Yeah, Jamali Jack, how would you rate Harvard Business School's Justice series with Michael Sandel? Also, I think watching Apple keynotes, especially Steve Jobs' days, is an excellent way to appreciate slide design.
I have not seen Harvard Business School's Justice series. I'd like to take a look at it. The Apple keynotes, I mean, that is what slide design should look like, in my opinion. Like flat out. Like if you look at the Apple keynote, you're not looking at something that's technologically complicated. I mean, obviously there is parts of it nowadays. They're putting a lot more into it. But if you go back to the old Steve Jobs ones, you're looking at a relatively simple deck that is not hard to build, and it's very simple. It is the gold standard. Like it is, like just watch those. You know, when someone asks me like, what should I watch before I really get into this? I just say, you got to watch Connections every year. So James Burke, Connections. I am trying to get James Burke on here. We'll see if we can get him to come join us. But James Burke's Connections is free on Internet Archive. You can download it. It's really low res. Doesn't matter. It's still the best education series ever made. And what I mean by that is that it is structurally the best education series ever created in the history of the world. No close second. Every teacher should watch it because you watch how he tells a story. My kids won't let you talk in the room while the show's going on because they can't keep up. You know, they're trying to keep up with what he's doing, how he's building the story. It doesn't feel like he's going very fast. And get through the first episode because that's not the best one in the history of the world. But as he starts going into this, my kids are enthralled. When I was a kid, I was enthralled. That is the best. The second best is Alton Brown's Good Eats, whether you like food or not. Structure, you know, the structure of how he teaches is amazing. And then from a slide design, Apple, like these are the high points of what I think every teacher should watch and have in their head when they think about how they're going to talk about things. Phil?
Yeah, I think also a lot of the classic TED Talks are real concise. The slides aren't too complicated, real streamlined and
18 minutes. 18 minutes. And a lot of them are done live 18 minutes. Now, remember that there's a lot of rehearsal. Like I've seen those rehearsals. There's a lot of rehearsal that happens to get it to 18 minutes and make it useful. But you're absolutely right, Phil. The TED Talks are another great. And what we should do is I'm going to build an education section inside of Discord. We have an education place, but I'm going to build a whole section. And one of the things we should do is put great examples of educational content so that we can have links to where you can go and look for reference, and all of us can talk about those things, because I think those are some of the best TED Talks. I think are a great example of a lot of that. Next question. Oh, go ahead, Jeff, and then next question.
Just wondering where Connections is available streaming.
It's hidden in Internet Archives. I don't know how long it'll be there if everyone realizes it's there, but someone uploaded it to Internet Archive. Maybe we can put it in the chat area. I'll try to find it again. Someone sent me the link and I downloaded them all. And now I have them all down.
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. I just put the link in.
Yeah, the nice thing about the Internet Archive is you can download them all. So, and then you can easily play them to your. Are they all up there, Roscoe? Are they all on the?
I don't know. I'm just Trigger Effect. I know is up there, and a few more. I haven't gotten very far.
All of them are there, and just go you can grab the whole thing. It's like 40 gigs, and you just grab the whole thing, and it's the first two, and then it's the day that changed the world, and everything's all there. You just grab the whole thing and pull it down. But it is, it's literally it's what we should be aspiring to, in my opinion. Next question.
Hey Mitchells, can the second education hour be officially scheduled for the noon mystery hour that hasn't had any consistent content since the presenter for the network hour has been busy? It would also allow the hour a lot of flexibility to go over if the conversations got hot.
Right now, I'm going to leave it as the second. Let me think about that. The structure of what we're trying to do is a little bit more technical after 9 a.m. than a kind of an open thing. That's why I made it the second hour of Saturday. But we'll think through that. I mean, maybe there's an education technology hour that is really nuts and bolts about something that we really get into, like the overheads, that we were talking about earlier, or something very specific. Next question. I like the idea, Mitchells. I just have to think about how we do that. Next question.
John Krieger has a follow-up to his earlier question. He's saying more K-12 teachers get it when it comes to the importance of interactive classes. My own classes revolve around conversations. I need programs to facilitate various configurations of conversation.
Emily?
Sorry, there are two new ones that I haven't done a whole lot of research into the privacy policies for K-12, but the new one is by S'more, and it's called Field Trip, and it has a lot of different interactivity and setup. And then if you're talking about small groups talking together, there's one called Congregate.live, and you can actually take the attendees and put them at different tables and then rearrange the tables. So if you want to move kids around the classroom, it's like a seating chart, and you can move the kids around. But it's brand new, so I haven't used it with anyone other than like 2 or 3 people, so I'm not sure like on the mass scale how it works.
Michael, and then Tim.
Yeah, I'm just going to mention a bunch of conversation tools. If you have Canvas or Blackboard, the discussion platforms in there are relatively robust. Not always the best user interface, but might be a good starting point. There in higher ed, there's a really popular platform called Piazza, which is pretty decent. There's a newer one called CampusWire, which students like because it looks a lot like Facebook Messenger. And then Discourse is just the general forum software. You need someone to help you set it up, but it can actually work really well for courses, especially if they get to 50 or larger students. And then there's a newer platform called edstem.org, which is definitely geared towards science and higher ed, but has a bunch of really cool tools for dealing with large courses.
That's great. Tim?
There's a new one I've been playing with called Online Town. It's got a real cheesy interface where you get a little character, like a Zelda-looking character that walks around on a grid. But they use proximity to enable the camera and microphone. So you can walk over and have a conversation with some people, or you could walk over to the large group. They have a conference room. You walk into the keynote room. You hear the speaker. So it's kind of interesting that way where you could dynamically break off and say, hey, the 3 of us are going to go over here and talk about a different topic. And it's completely free. Online Town.
That's great. Next question.
Tony Adamopoulos says, any good stand recommendations to use an iPad or iPhone as a second document camera in Zoom?
Jeff?
Don't have any particular recommendations, but I would steer toward the iPhone rather than the iPad just for weight. You need such better stand for the iPad.
What I'll say is that there's a ton of things you can use if you use an iPhone, and the camera is going to look just the same, or better. So, the iPhone or even iPod Touch is a really easy one, and it's really light, and there's 1,000 things that are $3 to attach it, and then it's just a matter of grabbing tripods or other things. Mickey, and then Roscoe, and then Phil.
This is a product from Joby. It's called the Grip Tight Pro, and it has a rubberized finish and feels really secure when I put the phone or even an iPad on it.
And as a relatively simple document tool, Joby makes one that has that along with 2 little bendy arms with little lights, and it's all a kit. And you can create kind of a document viewer that they're all connected, and it just kind of 2 lights out there and everything else. And I've used that as a relatively inexpensive one. It's worked really well. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, this
and then
one
Phil.
has a quarter 20, so you can mount it on a mic stand or a tripod or a light stand if you want to.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and look at your bicycle store, because there's a ton of mounts, and a lot of them have 1024s on them, and you can put them on tripods. So yeah, just check out bike stores too for iPhone holders.
Phil, and then Michael.
Yeah, this is I got put you on top. I use like a keyboard stand to put the iPad on, and that's a nice little heavy duty thing. It depends on kind of what your angle you're looking for, but it makes it a nice. Just put the iPad on that.
Mm-hmm. Next, Michael.
Yeah, my favorite iPhone adapter, they don't make these in iPad size, although some ones is the Studio Neat Glyph. They've gone through various iterations, but the current one is actually adjustable, so it works with most size phones, and it has 3/4 20 mounts, and you could put these in many places, and you can also get like a cheap, $15 gooseneck arm on Amazon or GorillaPod or whatever, and put it anywhere.
Jeff, and then Mickey.
You have 2 options for sharing that in Zoom. Zoom has options if you plug your iPhone into your Mac, and you can actually do a share screen from that device, or you can actually join the meeting from the iPhone device itself, and then you have a separate person that you can switch to. So 2 ways to show that screen.
Mickey?
Yeah, that's a good point. Another option for mount would be take a look at what's available for mounting iPhones or iPads on mic stands, like a company like OnStage who makes microphone stands for stage and studio use. They have a bunch of mounts as well, so take a look at their offerings.
Okay, next question. We're going to try to finish this up in the next minute.
Joyce Moss, who's the source of connections? I think the link is actually in the chat now.
Link's in the chat, and it is, someone made me post it one more time, so it's at the top of the pile. It was originally done by the BBC and PBS in the 70s, and it is amazing how well it's held up 40 years later. It is completely watchable, and I tested with 10 and 12-year-old kids. If you're into any kind of technology or history, you can have them watch that too. I mean, they were riveted. They're ready to watch it again. So it's pretty amazing piece of content. And for teachers, I use it as my reference point of how to think about how to sew a story together when I'm trying to teach something. Next question.
Sean Johnson, are there any good resources or people to follow regarding remote learning relative to pre-K and K classrooms? God bless you on that one, man.
Emily?
Christina Pinto. She's Pinto Beans 11 on Twitter, but she has a website called Gaff for Littles, and she paired up with someone who's doing specifically remote learning for pre-K and K, and she does lesson plans and templates, and you can take them and convert them and use them and all sorts of good stuff on her website. And I think they just released a book.
That's fantastic.
Wow.
We have made it. We got all the questions. Last time we were 18 deep, I think, or 15 deep. We made it to the end of these, and so we did it. I thought that the attendees, you did a great job at making sure we had enough questions for the whole hour. For the panelists, all the educators, everyone that has contributed, thank you so much. Again, this is a very odd thing where it's a show that's created by us. So there's the, and so I just really want to thank everyone for coming. This is of course the hour that I'm most passionate about, and so I learn as much as anyone here. So anyway, so thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being part of this conversation, and we're going to have this conversation again tomorrow. So if you're here and you thought that this was useful, tell your friends. Here, I'll post it one more time so that you all have it here. Especially if you have educators that you think would be interested in this and that could contribute as well. There's the link. Share it with your friends. Bring more educators in. We want to keep on making this a bigger piece of that. Michael, you were going to say something? And Roscoe?
I was just going to say, for educators, it'd be so great, Alex, if we could have like a little web page. I've been forwarding the emails to people.
It's coming. It's coming. So yeah, there's going to be there's a lot that the guys are working on in the background. Phil and Paul Shadwell and Grant and so we've got a bunch of folk. We're working on it. So the website, we should have something in the next week or two. Roscoe?
Possible YouTube tomorrow for the first 2 hours?
Yep, YouTube for at least the first 3 hours. It's the fourth hour I'm not sure of, but yeah, we'll.
Okay.
For the first, first 3 hours definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all tomorrow morning. Hit it, Mickey. Remember, education, second hour, vMix, third hour, Final Cut, fourth hour, and then Unreal Engine on the fifth hour. So tomorrow's the long day. Sunday, we're just hanging out, talking. We'll probably talk a lot more about the Q&A system and philosophy and things that we don't talk about during the week. So anyway, we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.